Hello friends and welcome to another episode of the Urban Homesteading channel. If this is your first time visiting with us, we want to extend to you a very warm welcome and invite you to view any of our almost 500 videos arranged for your convenience in playlists, as we are confident you're going to find something both entertaining and educational. If you've been here before but you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Do subscribe. If today is your birthday, we want to wish you a very happy birthday. As we continue working on the house we purchased, we have decided to make a feature wall in this wall, which is just surrounding our double door exiting to our deck. And the decision was to make it a wood covered wall. So we went to our local big box store and we purchased some wood, which incidentally is the same wood that I used to build the home build bar. And I'm going to put a card up here for you guys if you want to watch that episode. So today, if you stick around, we're going to show you all the steps we are going through to build this. The previous owners have used a piece of lumber there in order to put a curtain rod. And we kind of like that look, but we wanted to extend it to the whole wall. We're going to remove this piece of lumber because this is just unfinished lumber. And we wanted to put something a little better. So the first order of business will be to simply remove this board. And then we start the process of installing outboards. And these are a couple of examples of what you shouldn't do. As you can see, we have our paint there on the top, towards the ceiling. The previous owner painted between that and the lower part, which means they put the board on first, and then they painted around it. And as you can see, it was visible because you can see it's not straight at all. They did not use tape, they didn't use anything to prevent bleeding. So this is, it's okay. It didn't look horrible, but in the same token, really you should do it either using tape or do it before you put the boards. We're not going to paint it now because it's going to be covered anyway.
Well, I think that we want to touch up those corners to make sure that what shows from behind, if there's anything that shows from behind, that it matches your current paint scheme.
Well, we'll figure out.
Okay.
All right. And here is older dog Sierra, really enjoying our new backyard that is fenced for the first time in her life. And I think Karma is trying to tell me I need to start voiceovering my videos because once again we had a failure of our video equipment. Even though this is brand new, we replaced our older one with a brand new system, and still it only lasted for a few seconds and then it failed. And I didn't realize that it failed until I was reviewing to edit the video. So here we stepped outside to do some cutting, and I did not have any other place. So I picked up 2 logs that they are plentiful in our property, and I used them as a makeshift workspace, which actually worked pretty good for the duration of this project. And that goes to show you that you don't need really fancy equipment to do woodworking in your home. As you can imagine, this project required quite a lot of cutting, and again these logs came out to be very useful for this process. And here we're cutting one of their first lengths, and we're using our small saw, our small circular saw, that in fact has been very valuable and has served us very well since we bought it during Christmas. In fact, that was a Christmas gift for me, and I didn't really realize how useful it was. I'm sure I'm going to continue using it even after I get all my tools from Kansas, which is supposed to happen in the next couple of weeks, and I'm very excited about that. I will show you when that happens, even though I do not have a really good plan yet where I'm going to store them, since I don't have an official workshop yet. So using a square helps you make straight cuts with this little saw, and the cuts are more than acceptable. But of course here, a miter saw would have been a much better solution. I'm letting Elpida here use the saw. She enjoys doing this, and it is a good practice for her. So it's always a good idea. The more tools you learn how to use, the better off you are. And it's always a good idea to let people use your tools or use new tools, because that is really the only way to learn. And of course, be there for letting them know, not for letting them know, that was stupid. Be there to advise them when they do something that needs to be improved, etc. But cutting the boards is fairly straightforward. And if you do have a miter saw, I strongly recommend that you use a miter saw for this process rather than using this tool that we use, because it doesn't give you the most accurate cuts, unfortunately. And here we're inside. We have removed the original board, as you saw before, and now we're putting the first length of board and simply attach it with brad nails and our Airstrike, a tool that, as you know, have been found to be invaluable in most of our projects. You do not need a lot of pins here. I probably put 5 or 6 in the length of the board, because really, as the wall is built, it becomes stronger and stronger, and of course it doesn't need to support itself in any significant way. So just a little bit of support, and you could actually go ahead and glue it. We didn't. Here we show you the biggest part of the wall, the top part, which is go from side to side finished. And now we're going to start working on the other part, which is the two sides on the right and left of the door. We're going to start with the right side, because it is the most difficult one, requires a lot more cuts, because there is, as you can see there, a switch that we need to work around it. And this requires a little bit of planning, but it is nothing really difficult. We could have done the same up there, but really it worked out very well for us, and we didn't have to really mess around with making extra cuts. And we try to minimize our cuts using this tool, because again, it's not the easiest tool to use, and you can avoid mistakes if you minimize the number of cuts you're going to have to do. You do need to be careful here, because you want at least one side, and in our case is the side that touches the door frame, to be as perfect as you can make it. The other side is not critical, because it's going to be covered by trim eventually. But the size on the door, you can make it as good as you can. And of course, you can use some silicone or wood putty when you're done to cover any big gaps, or you can leave it as is, because it shows this homely kind of rustic look, which is something that we enjoy, but some people do not. They like perfection there. And again, for us, this is acceptable. But if it is not for you, there are ways to do it, even if your cut is not perfect. Some of our boards were not excellent. They were all acceptable. Some of them were absolutely fantastic. And we do account for that with the limitations of the tool we use. But if you're using the proper tool, probably your results will be excellent in every cut. Not having a bench and not having a miter saw made this process a little more complex, but overall we are very happy with the results, and we would do it again if we had the chance. And here we stepped outside, and we're using our chisel to make the original opening that we created for the switch plate a little more finished. Even though it is not visible, this is going to be covered by the plate. You do want to make it as close to the box that is covered as possible, but again, there is a little bit of forgiveness here, because you're going to be using a plate over it, so it's really not going to be visible. A medium-sized chisel like we used here is a good tool to make the opening look a little smoother. You can see there a little bit of the saw marks from the circular saw we used to create the opening and take most of the material away. But again, you don't have to do that if you are not bothered. I'm a little bit of an OCD person, so even though this will never be seen, I like to have it as good as I could have it with the material and the equipment I have. And there you can see the circular saw marks. I came very close to the mark we made, and we are satisfied with that process. And here we'll go inside, and we're putting the second part. Both parts were cut using the same system. And here you see them connected, and as you can realize by this view, when we put the plate over it, it is going to be totally hidden. Here again, we're using our Airstrike, a tool that I have really enjoyed using over the years. And while you're very close, you can see those little marks. When you walk more than a foot away from the wall, they actually disappear. You cannot even see them. And if they do bother you, I think they give character to the wall. But if they do bother you, a little dab of wood putty will cover them very nicely, and you don't even know they are there after you sand them a little bit. So that's another thing to remember. And here we are with the finished part. The two pieces are together now, and we are going to start working a little bit on the switches. Because the standard switches and the standard plate screws do not have the length required to bring the screws out and make them look good over that extended wall, we had to go to the store and buy extra length screws. The screw that you see that it is brass is the screw we bought, and the silver screw is the screw that was originally on the wall with the plate, and it was simply not long enough to reach the plate to the back of the box with the material that we added, the thickness of the wood. So we simply went and bought 4 of those brass screws, and they actually worked really good, as you're going to see in a few minutes. You would never know that this was not always like that, and that's where the power of the finishing touches. They allow you to make seamless transitions. Again, we are going to show you the 2 screws. You need to make sure that they are the same diameter and also the thread count. And here, that little square with a hole in it is designed to hold the screw on the back of the switch. So when you are further away from the switch box, you still have the screw in the right positioning to hold it. Here I simply put the backing in and started by hand. You don't have to do that, but if you want to do it, some people would say this is the correct way to do it. I really don't think there is a correct and incorrect way to do things, but if you want to do it, that's something you would do. It will add a little bit of time, and that's something you cannot really use a power tool for. You're going to have to do it using old manual ways by using your fingers to tighten it. Once you have it in the position you want it, it is a simple way to put it in the original opening there. And you can see it now with the plate, and you see how nicely it looks. The switches are in the correct position. They are not sunken in. They look perfect as they are supposed to look. And once again, attention to little details like this really make a big difference on the final outcome of your project, and it's worth taking your time to do those things correctly. You see a little bit of marks there when we were using our chisel to clean the piece, and those can be very easily removed with a very, very light sanding, and you're welcome to do that if that's something that bothers you. Again, to me that gives a little character. One of the difficulties we have here is that at the bottom of this part of the wall there is a pet door. We have not decided if we're going to keep it or not, but for this project we decided not to remove it, so we're going to work around it, and if the future decide to fill it in, we're going to have to remove those boards and board over it, but this is not difficult because we bought standard boards that are always available at the box store. And here you see the final project of the wall of the right side. As you can see, there are some gaps towards the wall on the left, and again this will be covered by trim, and we're going to show you that in a few moments to you, and you will never know it's there. And this is also good because to a very large degree you do want a little bit of room for the wood to expand and contract. It is not critical for this small length, but it doesn't hurt, and this will never be visible as we're going to show you in a few minutes. What I'm holding here now is the trim, and this is just a very simple piece of wood. You could go with a decorative trim here, but it doesn't fit our idea of the space, and again we want this to be very rustic, very farm style, so a very simple trim will allow us to cover any imperfections and will allow us to frame this wall since it is a display wall of sorts. And again the process is simple. We're going to put it in place, and then we're using our air strike, as we have used for most of this project, to hold it in place. The air strike is the perfect tool for this job because it doesn't leave marks, especially for something that is so high in the wall, you simply will not see it, and also ties together the trim with the wall and the back. I try to put them in an angle so that helps them stay more steadily. And again, you could use some form of adhesive here. I chose not to do that, but if you use, that is perfectly acceptable for this application. Just make sure that it's not going to whip out and so. You see another piece of trim there on the wall. And I'm using this to hold the other piece up. And this is a trick that you can use when you work by yourself. And even though I had assistance this time, I used this trick because it was very tight quarters with the ladder there. So instead of having someone squeeze in a very tight place, I used this other piece of trim to hold my first trim up, and it works beautifully and it makes your life easier. We're going to measure and cut the second piece, and the top part of the wall trim is going to be finished. And as you can see, this is a very straightforward and easy process to follow. Now you can see the finished project with the trim on the wall, and you can see it looks very nice. All the little gaps that you saw before have disappeared. It creates a very nice framing, and it looks really nice and finished in any sense of the word. We are very pleased with how this project turned out, and we hope you're going to try that in your own spaces, as it is a great way to enhance a wall and make it look very special and also customized. I hope you did enjoy this nice episode. We are really happy with the way that the wall ended up looking. We do have to take some of the labels off, but that is easy. And we wanted to show you that even with very minimal tools, you can generate some really interesting and very good looking projects. I'm really pleased with this. It's one of my favorite projects so far, and it gives the character that we want to this space, making it truly our space and changing it from a house we bought to a home. Again, there are many different things you can do here. You can replace the wood with tile, for example. There are a lot of things that you can make a focus wall. Again, I do hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, let us know what you would like to see in upcoming episode of the Urban Homesteading channel, and we are going to always try and accommodate you. Every time that one of you tell us you want to see something, we are going to show you how to make it, and hopefully that will help you. You can do it. This is not as hard as you initially think. If you did enjoy this episode, we ask you to support us and give us a thumbs up. Or if you didn't like it, the other button works as well. From the Garage Woodworker, Miss Woodworker Elpida at the Urban Homesteading channel, want to wish you a great week, and we hope you're staying safe these difficult times. Farewell, friends.